Welcome to Marlax 101. I am your host, Marlax. But today's video, the best exploration ship. What is it? Why is it? Where is it? Um, I'm gonna go ahead and save you the time. It's gonna be the Carrack in my mind, hands down. A couple of reasons in this, and I'm gonna make a separate video kind of discussing this, but it really comes down to my thought process over my fleet and the Crucible. And we're gonna go through all of the ships here that are exploration for the most part and kind of talk about it a little bit and why I think it'll fall short of what the Carrack can do. Now, when it comes to the Crucible, my main thought process here has been repairing your ships while you're at space. The Crucible is going to be able to extend that duration, that lifespan, as you go out into the space. But to do that, you're going to need materials. So either salvage material or ore material, etc. And then it got me thinking about, well, is it better to have, for those who don't know, I have a Carrack and I'm going to get the Liberator and stuff. And my thought process, is it better to have a Liberator or a Liberator and a Crucible or two Liberators? And naturally I would think Crucible because it's a different ship. But then I got to thinking, well, if you're exploring and the Liberator has ships on board and those ships get damaged, I would need the Crucible to fix them. But then I won't have endless amounts of materials to keep them repaired. Whereas if you have two Liberators, you can have two separate fleets and basically rotate them in when your ships are damaged to some degree. The Starfarer being one of the biggest bonuses to having any exploration fleet. I think the Starfarer is potentially one of the best options if we're going to be completely honest, because it's going to give you the maximum amount of range. So let's go through this. Terrapin, small ship, heavily armored, probably isn't going to have as much range. Has 4 thrusters, so it's good. But any of these thrusters can be shot off. They have their own HP pools. And that's where I started making the decisions. You are going to need structural salvage or structural repair to fix these kind of things for the most part. Unless you happen to find spare engines, I suppose, somewhere, or bring them with you. I mean, other than that, I don't really see this working. And then if you can just reattach these spare engine parts, then you wouldn't need structural repair ships anyway, because you could just hand repair and stick the new engines on. So, when it really comes down to these ships and us looking at them, we're going to have to look at these engines for when it comes to exploration. So, Pathfinder, good ship. I really like the Terrapin, but for the longest duration missions, eventually you're going to lose engines at some point, and then you're going to need structural repair. But it does have those back main thrusters in the Terrapin, and you're probably going to need at least to lose at least 2 to 3 engines before this thing actually goes down. Constellation Aquila, similar thing. It does have good range, a lot of abilities, all the things that you would like, but it has 4 engines that can be blown off. Again, you're probably going to have to destroy, 2 to 3 of these to shut it down for the most part. Okay? So that's where this is coming in. Less armor, no real repair capabilities besides, whatever you bring on the ship to repair your ship with, or having hand tools to go out there and get material and then use that to repair your ship. So you could potentially keep these things going for a while, but once you lose those engines, they're done. Now we look at the Carrack. This, in my opinion, is the best exploration ship because there's something that nobody talks about with any ship in the game, and that is the parts. when you look at the Carrack, and actually a number of Anvil ships, I just happen to collect a lot of Anvil ships for my fleets. But when you look at these Anvil ships, what do you see? This is one solid piece. So on the wiki, they have all these cargo modules in the bridge and everything with 5,000 HP. Okay. But the rest of this is solid. It's one solid piece for the most part. The only things that can really break off are these side wing sections on the Carrack. But you see, these wing sections, all they really are is the landing gear and where the turret is. So even if you lose those sections, the Carrack is still a capable ship. And you're going to be able to keep flying out in the universe. This is where I think it really steps ahead of everything else and is the best exploration ship in the game. Don't even have to mention the long range scanners and stuff because all these, the scanners, the jump point, and little antennas and stuff, none of that matters because if they get shot off, it's still a ship, you know? So this is where this kind of system is coming into play. It has potentially the ability to carry repair drones, um, which is already pretty big. Medical area, pretty big. Its own repair, pretty much area, component, repair, whatever that thing is, that 3D printer that's inside of this is going to be very, very useful. I would actually think it would be a 3D printer of some sort to produce like multi-tools or something similar to the Reclaimer, but we'll have to see. Mustang Beta, starter ship. It's not going to hold up long term. If any of the wings or anything gets blown off, it's going to suck in atmosphere, etc. 400i Touring. So this, I believe, is still a decent option from what we've seen, with one caveat. The 400i Touring, as you can see, the engines are integrated in the back, so it's going to be just like the Carrack for the most part. But it has these wings on the side. Now, if those can get destroyed, then it might have problems in atmosphere. But other than that, I think this could potentially be a decent ship. It has like a little area for a little motorcycle. It has a little area for like a little ground vehicle in the back. It's a pretty nice looking ship all in all, but it doesn't really have repair capabilities, facilities. I don't think it has a medical station. More in line with like the Aquila, essentially, just a little bit fancier for the most part. And you know, not a bad ship, but long term, I'm still going to go with the Carrack for the best ship. This is probably going to be towards the top as well. PCs comes with the Carrack. Basically, it's just a little shuttlecraft, but if you lose one of these wings, that could potentially harm you in atmosphere pretty bad. So we'll have to see on that, but it's all right, little ship. Corsair, good range, high firepower, does have the ability to carry some things. Has two engines, so as soon as you lose one of these engines, the ship is done. Whether it's damaged in combat and can't operate, or gets completely blown off and needs structural repair, you're going to need a tow to get this out. Constellation Phoenix. Still the same issues as the other constellations. Having four engines, it's going to be better than having two, but um, you're going to have issues long term with the ship if those engines get blown off at any point in combat. Even one engine can kind of be a pain, but you could deal with it. These touring bikes, they go inside of the 400i, so those are pretty interesting. 600i Explorer, this one's kind of up there with the Carrack and stuff, I would think, but there's one big caveat with the 600i's. So If you look at these pictures, it has the integrated engines on the inside, so your engines aren't going to be blowing off. The wings are fairly compact. There's not really anything that I could say there. The big thing with the 600i is it's a luxury ship. So this is going to be the competitor for the Carrack. The difference is still no repair facilities. I don't recall it having a medical bay. It's like 90% glass. And then it has all of this interior. So once they start implementing fires and things of that nature on ships, that's where these luxury ships will kind of have a downside, because as soon as a fire catches on the ship, um, you're going to have some problems because these materials, the fires are going to spread rapidly. Other than that, pretty decent ship. Go ahead and look at the buying options here. What all ships do you get in that? Carrack Terrapin, 600i, Carrack Name Reservation, Constellation Aquila. Anyway, gonna have a similar issues to the Carrack. It's gonna be a capable ship, but this isn't gonna be something that you can manage long term. I don't think. I mean, it's gonna get messed up pretty bad. It's gonna be decent. You're gonna have the same sort of issues that the Carrack has. You're not gonna have the potential flexibility of the drones or that repair bay, but you'll probably have better like range or something, I'm sure. The fire is the big hazard there. The Carrack is like solid metal. The 600i has wood and stuff inside. So we got another PCs, 85X Touring. I'm pretty sure this can fit inside the Carrack. I'm not really worried about it. 890 Jump. This is going to be basically the biggest competitor, but not really a dedicated exploration ship. It's more a luxury touring. You're still going to have the same issues with fire and, you know, essentially all the things that the luxury ships have. I don't think it has a repair bay either on this. So, or drones. So really, like, it's going to be a capable ship, but long term, eventually it's going to get worn down and you're going to need repairs, and hopefully no fires ever start on board this vessel. Constellation Phoenix again, again with the engines. Freelancer Dur, again, 2 engines. As soon as one of those get blown off, your ship's pretty much done for. 315P Pathfinder, small craft, probably pretty decent. I'm sure these little wings and fence can get blown off. Aurora LX Pathfinder, this is probably going to be one of the better smaller ships because it doesn't really have engines that can be destroyed off the back of it. Potentially these fins could get damaged, but there's also like 4 fins there. So you have pretty decent little bitty ship that's going to be somewhat easier to repair, I believe. Cutter Rambler, probably decent range, still has 2 engines, so as soon as one of those gets blown off, you're in the water. Odyssey, potentially the biggest competitor to the Carrack. Now, this is what I'll say about the Odyssey. You can see in the pictures, it has 4 big engine things on the side. If these can be destroyed, this is going to be a big downside to the Odyssey. If any of these engines get damaged to the point where they fall off the ship, you're going to need repair. This ship does not have any dedicated repair facilities, drones, anything like that. So if you are going to be doing repairs on this ship, you're going to have to EVA out into space, which could potentially expose you to pirate attacks or hostile elements, etc. So there's a lot of downsides with the Odyssey that you don't really have with the Carrack, and that's why the Carrack would still be up on top. The next thing is that this comes with a mining laser and a refinery, as well as a med bay to compete with the Carrack and have extended range. So essentially, with the Carrack, its main downside is that it can't produce fuel. Okay, but it can sustain itself a lot better. The benefit of the Odyssey is it can produce fuel, but this is also a negative because if you are refining material, there's probably going to be the potential that that refinery can explode or do damage to your ship. You're probably going to be in a state where you don't have as much power on board your ship if you are refining material. If you become under attack while refining material, I'm sure you're probably going to have a downside to doing that. The next thing is that mining anything with this ship is going to potentially put you in hazardous areas. So asteroid fields, anything could happen. Messing up on a rock and it exploding could potentially do damage to the ship. So you're putting the ship in undue harm for the most part. Uh, and as soon as you get damaged in any sort of way that's going to impact the long-term ability of the ship to travel, it's effectively lost its utility for the most part. So even if it has this medical bay, just like the Carrack, even though it has a bigger hangar potentially, there's nothing that you can really do to do structural repair if this thing happens. Even if you could stick a Vulcan inside that hangar bay, you can't do structural repair as of yet with just basic repair drones. So unless they implement that, uh, you're probably going to lose your engine at some point. Like maybe this is negligible, in the end. Maybe they, make it to where you can find your engine and stick it back on your ship at some point. But for now, it's not really feasible, I would say, for the most part. And this is why I think the Odyssey is going to fall off when it comes to very long range exploration, because those mining utilities and stuff that it has, you could just get a Starfarer and bring the Starfarer with the Carrack and just make gas. Whereas this, I mean, you're going to need a Vulcan, and then you're going to have to be able to transfer fuel to the Vulcan to go with it. To have somewhat similar capabilities, but not exactly. The other thing is, in the future, if they ever allow drones to siphon fuel, then that means that the Carrack could potentially have like salvage drones on its ship and siphon fuel from enemy ships that it finds, extending its range. If you can hand fill fuel tanks, then potentially Carracks could disable and then refill their fuel tanks manually. They have access to the fuel tanks inside the ship, so it's possible, I would assume. Um, the Odyssey doesn't really say anything about being able to refill ships, but again, if you could pull fuel out of the Odyssey and put it into other ships, then you could just, repair your Vulcan forever and keep your Vulcan with it. But then your Vulcan is just like an additional fuel tank storage, so it's not really super beneficial besides some of the minor repairs that it can do. And there probably isn't going to be a major need for this ship to just go around siphoning gas, even though it would give it additional options to make gas. So there is that. Essentially, this is if it has fuel scoops, then essentially it's kind of like a Starfarer, kind of like a mining ship, and kind of like a Carrack in some sense of the word. But I think the structural repair is going to be the big one for this still. MK2 Zeus. Internal built engines. Cool looking design. Can't really complain about it. Doesn't look like there's a whole lot of parts that can be broken off. So this right here is probably going to be a decently acceptable little explorer ship. I would say though that it doesn't have a bunch of guns that are super amazing. It has like I think 4 size 4s and a couple of size 3s or something along those lines. And then most of those weapons are forward facing, so the ship just doesn't have the flexibility that the Carrack would have. This could potentially chase down and attack a Carrack, but other than that, I mean, it's not going to be the biggest deal. The biggest trade-offs between those is that if the Carrack's turrets get destroyed, then the turrets are destroyed, so that's going to be the weak side for the Carrack for the most part. If the Zeus loses its weapon hardpoint, it might be able to replace them if it finds more in the game, but we'll have to see on that. They're potentially smaller targets, so Zeus could potentially be an alright ship, maybe. Let's see, Zeus Mark II. I like this red design they have on this one. Security-oriented spacecraft designed for multi-crew operations, emphasizing security and pursuit of bounties. '16 SCU cargo. Let's look at the exploration version. So exploration version, 32 SCU of cargo, medium ships that could potentially use more jump points in the Carrack, a lot smaller cargo, still going to be more attack focused than anything. I mean, it says that has a good radar. Probably a decent medium-ish size craft, I would assume. And after that, we just had the Cutter Scout. So again, you know, if one of these engines go, then this ship's pretty much in the water. That's pretty much the gist of why I think the Carrack is the best. As you can see on this, the vehicle parts, I mean, the middle section, 6,000 hit points. The rear is, you know, still 3,000, but you're not going to lose your engine. So as long as you can repair the engines, it should be good. The wings are still 5,000, so if you lose those wings, that's going to be the biggest downside to the ship. Um, but I mean, it's not really anything besides a landing gear for the most part. So if you lose your wing, you're probably not going to be able to land on planet surfaces, and you lose a turret. So that kind of sucks. Front, if that goes, then basically it just goes. Cargo pods are just cargo pods. So you can see it's just right here is literally all there is. It's like 4 parts on the ship. And when it talks about wings, it's talking about this right here, I'm pretty sure. So basically, if you lose your side turret on the Carrack, it makes an entry point where people can try to get on board your ship, and you lose a landing gear and a gun. Kind of sucks, but potentially not that bad in the grand scheme of things, you know? So you guys have a good one. If you agree with this or have some other comments, just let me know.